tape of the Welcome to your next tape of the Joe Verde training program, How to Close More Sales. This program was designed by Joe to help you close more sales, overcome your customers' objections, stay off price on the lot, and hold gross. There is also homework and a quick quiz for you to fill out at the completion of each tape in this series. And now, let's begin. Here's Joe.
All right. Let's talk about some methods to handle objections. Now, we just went through the 5 questions that make up almost everything we're going to talk about the rest of this entire series. The yes questions, the either-or questions, the involvement questions, sharp angle, the assumptive questions, statements, and closes. Now, let's do a little quick quiz here. What do we use yes questions for? We use them to get people to say yes. These are called tie-downs and tag-ons. First thing we use them for is to get people to say yes. That would be called a minor commitment. We also use them to build value, and we use them to do what else? Remember, we get minor commitments, we get the yeses, we build value, and we close the sale step by step. The either-or question, what do we use those for? What's the primary? There's 4 primary reasons. What do we use either-or questions for? Heard somebody say to investigate. We use them to control the conversation, we use them to make appointments, and we use them specifically to close the sale. What percent of the time should you use an either-or to close the sale? Almost all the time, 95, 99% of the time. Involvement questions. What does that force on people? What does it force them to do? Forces them to take what kind of ownership? Mental ownership. You guys are paying attention. Congratulations. Sharp angle close, sharp angle question means we just respond with a question to their question. Now, do you do that every time they ask you a question? No, of course not. Assumptive statements, questions, and closes. Assumptive statements build value. Assumptive questions build even more value. Assumptive closes. You use the assumptive statement to lead up to an either-or closing question. Let's also look now on this side of the board. I said if you'll learn these 5 closing techniques and these 5 methods to handle objections, you'll get rich in this business, and you will. When we look at the methods that we need to use to handle objections, you know, we were talking before, we've got 7 objections, basically, and we go through a career never learning how to handle them. It's because we don't learn to use these 5 techniques or these 5 methods. We'll go through these one by one real quick, and then we'll spend some time on each one. Again, we use a bypass to bypass questions and objections that we don't want to talk about yet. Price questions, color and equipment questions. Until it's time to talk about them, let's don't talk about them. Let's, kind of like that tree branching away, let's move them aside so that we can get on to what we need to do. Clarify objections. We spent a lot of time on the wrong objection just because we didn't clarify to find out exactly what the objection was. Rephrase objections. We can take almost any objection, change the words around and make it something that's easier to close, and I'll show you how to do that. Isolate objections. Key step in handling objections. Most of us skip this one and wonder why after we handle this objection the customer comes up with another objection. And obviously closing on objections. Before we get into a bypass, let me explain, clarify a little bit here. Now, we're out on the lot, they brought up price, we're going to bypass that until later, till it's time to talk about it. You're out on the lot, you try to close, and I was talking to a lady one day and I tried to close, and I said, well, sounds like found a perfect car, how are we going to register it? And she said, well, Joe, I need to go get my friend before I do anything. I need to go get my neighbor. Now, what's the only reason a person would want their neighbor there or want to go get a friend or want to go get that mechanic or that other support person? For support. Now, I was taught a fairly worthless technique when I first started selling cars, and I stress, fairly worthless. In fact, worthless would leave out fairly. My manager taught me that if the customer said, I need to go check with somebody else, I was taught to go out to the customer and say, Bob, you're a big boy, you don't need somebody to hold your hand, step up and make a decision. Don't use that technique. Doesn't work, never did work. I don't know why anybody would go to the trouble to teach it to somebody. I said, when a customer said, I want to go get somebody else, I said, what's the only reason they'd want that person there? Support's the one that comes up first in every class. But could there be any other reasons? What other reasons might a person want somebody there? Or might they say, I want to go get a friend? I think I heard somebody say they might just use it as an excuse to leave. Could be an excuse. Why else could they want a friend there? Give them some money, maybe co-sign, maybe they're the trustee of the trust fund. I was trying to close with this lady and she said, I want to go get my neighbor. Now, when we talk about clarifying objections, what we want to do is clarify. We want to find out what she means when she says, I want to go get a neighbor. So Betty said, no, Joe, I got to go get my neighbor first before I do anything. I said, well, now, Betty, is it to help you decide if this is the right car for you, or is there another reason? She said, I don't care what my neighbor thinks. I just need a ride back down here. She said, I borrowed a car, and I told her I'd bring it home before I got my new one. Now, what would most of us do once we got this objection? We clarified it. Is it this or something else? I just need a ride back to the dealership. Yesterday on the lot, I believe you said, oh, no problem, Betty, we can give you a ride home. And we may have missed an opportunity to close. We very likely missed it. We skip a step almost all the time. It's called isolate. Betty said, I just need a ride back down to the dealership. So Betty, and the key words to isolating objections is the word other than. So other than your friend not being here, is there any other reason we couldn't send you home in it now? When you isolate an objection, you get an agreement that they won't come up with any more objections. So Betty, other than your friend not being here, is there any other reason we couldn't send you home in it now? No, if I had a ride home, I'd take it. Now you close on it. Isolate and then close. And then you say, oh, don't worry, I needed to go get a hamburger after a while anyway. I'll give you a ride home, and I'll follow you in the new car, and you can bring me back after 12. You've already gotten an agreement that if you can handle this objection, you won't come up with anything else. And then we close on it. We need to learn to use these tools. Again, handling these objections is just a step-by-step process if you say and do the right thing. Turn the page, and let's look at page 43. And I want to spend some time talking to you about how to bypass price. Let's go through these now step by step. A lot of you may have our How to Stay Off Price on the Lot tape set. A lot of you may have been to the 3-day workshop. I've talked to people who've been to the class or just heard the information on tape. There's one dealer that had the audio tape on this. Listen to the audio tape. Sells Toyotas, fairly small community, sells about 60, 70 cars a month, and by learning how to stay off price, raised the gross $1,379 a car, and he wasn't a low gross dealer to begin with. I was talking to a woman selling Hyundais. She came to the class, she went back after work and said, I doubled my gross. I just doubled my gross profit on a car. I said, how'd you do that? She said, I quit talking price on the lot. I was talking to a general manager at a small Ford store in Washington. And we were talking, we'd done a one-day class for the salespeople, and he was in the class that day, and the other half was coming the next day. And he was out taking ups that day. And this guy's been a general manager for years. He's been in the car business 35 years, something like that back then. And he said the next day, he called me at the airport as I was leaving. He said, Joe, he said, this afternoon I did a nice job. I went out and I took some ups. He said, I got this older couple in I believe it was a Taurus. And he said, I did a nice job. They brought up price. I kind of bypassed it. I said, don't worry about that. We'll get that in a minute. And he said, I got them behind the wheel, did everything pretty much right. And he said, surprise, they never brought price up again after I bypassed it. He said, they didn't bring it up again until we were sitting down inside the office. And he said, I sat down and I started doing the paperwork, and the old guy said, oh, now wait a minute. He said, what kind of discount you going to give me on this car? And Mike said, I didn't even mean to say it, but I just responded with, we don't discount. Taurus, how are you going to pay for it? Cash, or are you going to finance it? He said, the only reason I even said that, he said, because you said it in class so many times yesterday, what kind of discount can I get? We don't discount these. He said, I didn't even mean to say it, I just blurted it out. And he said, we don't discount these, we're going to pay cash or finance it. And he said, the old guy stopped for a minute. He said, he looked at his wife, and she said, well, don't look at me, write him a check. I don't want to pay interest too. He said, and I got sticker price for the Taurus. And he said, I can't remember the last time I even asked for sticker price on one of these things. He said, I forgot people would pay you if you asked them, as long as you didn't give it away on the lot. Price is one of those subjects that comes up, and one of the first questions I asked you at the beginning of this series was, do most of your customers bring up price in some form out on the lot? And almost without exception, in every community I've ever been in and every person I've ever talked to, how much is it? What's my trade worth? What kind of discount can I get? What kind of payments am I going to have on this thing? When we talk about bypassing price on page 43, I need you to remember a lot of the things we've already covered. We talked about questions before, the power of questions. If I ask you a question, you've been taught to do what? You've been taught to respond. How many things can you think about at one time? How many things will your mind let you focus on? Just one. If I ask a question and supply the answers, what have you been taught to do? Pick one of the answers. So let's go through this technique, and you need a blank sheet of paper. Just write this down somewhere. Let's say the car we're looking at, 17,383. I want you to draw this picture, and this is not a picture of a slingshot. This is a picture of two roads. Now, can you talk price on the lot and bill value at the same time? Can you get into a hum-ha about what their trade's worth and bill the value known in the car? Probably not. You're either going to talk price or you're going to bill value. Let's say that this road leads to price and this road leads to value. Now, this is a three-step process, and you don't have to write these down. They're in your workbook. I just want to refer to them. It's a simple three-step process. You answer the question, you build a bridge, and you ask an either-or question. Let's go back out on the lot so we can understand this and how it works and look at some of the things that we say and do out there that we were taught to do. Yesterday on the lot, you were building rapport and investigating, everything's going along fine, and all of a sudden the customer said, how much is it? Which direction did they just head? They headed this direction. Now, they're not all the way that direction yet. They just asked you a question. That's their first price question. How did you respond yesterday on the lot when a customer said, how much is it? If that's the sticker price on the car or your market value on the car, how did you respond? You told them how much it was. You said it's 17.3. That's what most people do. Now, when you said it's 17.3, how did they respond? They said, well, that's too much, or what kind of discount you guys got? You probably said something like, what do we got to do to earn your business? And they said, well, you got to do a lot better than that. I was down the street. Guy down there will do it for 16. What can you do? And then you worked your way right into a price close, right into that price conversation that we've wanted to avoid so much. Let's pick a different price question. Go back out on the lot. You're building rapport and investigating, and all of a sudden they say, what do you figure payments would run on something like this? How did you respond yesterday? Well, Bob, depends on how much you put down. Or Bob, that's going to depend on the car we pick out. Or Bob's going to depend on a lot of things. And what did they say? Well, give me a wild guess. And you said, how's your credit? And they said, and then that didn't work either. Yesterday on the lot, same thing, building rapport and investigating. What's my trade worth? How did you respond? Well, Bob, we'll have our manager take a look at it. First, we got to find a car you like, or he won't even do that. What did they say? Go find out, or I'm not even going to spend any time here. Don't use procedure words when you're trying to bypass an objection. Well, the procedure here at our dealership is we got to do this, this, and this. I don't know if you've realized it, but people kind of balk at procedure. They want to do things their way. So none of those really worked. Let's look at how we can make them work for you. Now, in every class, in our 3-day class, we role play these things back and forth. Everybody responds with the right answer almost the first time. How much is it? 17.3. That's the correct response, but that's only step one. Step number 2 is we got to get from here back to here. This is called bridging. Some common word bridges. By the way, anytime you want to change the subject, you say, oh, by the way, and then switch subjects. Step number 3, to regain control of the conversation, we have to ask a question, and we need to ask an either-or question. In fact, we need to ask a series of these. So let's look at how we can bypass this price question. How much is it? Tell them, 17,383. By the way, who's the lucky one? Who gets the car, Bob? You or Betty? Betty's going to be driving it. And Betty, how are you going to use it? Business or pleasure? Business. Do you ride by yourself or carry people with you? I generally carry people with me. Do you prefer 5-speed or an automatic? Yeah, an automatic. Now, how many things can people think of at once? Just one. So what happened to the price question? It's out of sight, out of mind. It's so easy to get off price, it's scary. Mostly because price, that question wasn't a buying objection, it was a concern. Same thing down stereo store, how much is it? And you tell them, and then you move away from it quickly. There's some other things you could say. How much is it? 17.3, but before you even worry about price, in fact, let's set that aside a second. Bob, who's the lucky one? Who gets the car, you or somebody else? It's so easy to set it aside. They're very flexible on these things because these are just concerns, not objections. Back out on the lot yesterday. Let's take that second example. Visiting with them a minute, and they said, Joe, what would payments run on something like this? Tell them. You got to learn some new words in case you forgot. I don't know. And I know some of your pride and ego gets in the way and you can't make yourself say that anymore. It's okay to say I don't know as long as you explain why you don't know. If you'll explain why you don't know, it doesn't hurt your credibility or anything. It won't even hurt your ego. What would payments run on this? Gosh, I don't know. I can't even keep up with the cars and where they park them, much less what all the payments will run. Speaking of payments, that reminds me, were you guys looking for a 5-speed or an automatic? Or were you guys looking for basic transportation or something a little nicer? Something a little nicer, 2-door, 4-door station wagon. 4-door, 5-speed or automatic? Are you going to use a car for business or pleasure? and continue asking either or questions. What's my trade worth? I don't know. I went to a class one day and they told me there were thousands of make, model, and option combinations the last few years, and gosh, Bob, I appreciate your confidence, but I just can't keep up with it. Speaking of your trade, that reminds me, were you guys looking for another two-door, or would you rather have a four-door station wagon this time? Bypassing price is one of the easiest things you could do. The nice thing about in our three-day class, we get to talk about this with some of the people who've already learned the technique. In the last class, guy said I almost doubled my income, almost overnight, and all I did was stay off price. It's easy. It's easy because it's a concern. It's easy because we ask the right questions. It's easy because people can only focus on one thing at a time. It's easy because when I ask a question, they've been conditioned to respond. All I have to do is have more questions than they do. I have to have the right kind of questions so that I can control the conversation. Now, not very often, but now and then somebody will hit you with all 3 or 4 price questions at once. Normally they don't. How much is it? $17,300. By the way, who's the lucky one? Who gets the car, Bob? You or Betty? Well, it's going to be for Betty, but you know, if the payment's too high, we're not going to take it. What would payments run on something like this? Or what would the interest rate be? You know, we checked with a credit union. Well, Bob beats me. Our business manager deals with about 7 different banks, and the rates change constantly. But if you're looking for a good one, maybe even one that will do better than a credit union, we may have it. We'll check with her as soon as she gets back. Speaking of interest rates, were you guys looking for a 2-door, 4-door station wagon? I'm looking for a station wagon, but if I don't get enough in my car, I'm not buying it. What will they give me for that thing? Gosh, Bob, I don't know. I can't even keep up with all the new cars and equipment and options on them, much less what all the old cars are worth. Speaking of your car, were you looking for another 5-speed, or would you rather have an automatic? I want an automatic, but if payment's too high, I ain't taking it. Well, Bob, good news is the bank thinks payment's too high, they're not going to let you take it. Now, speaking of payments, did you want, and you just continue. All you have to do is end up back on this side. One of the most important things is to be consciously aware that we've slipped into price conversations. It's easy. You can say, we'll get back to that in a minute. First, let me show you the car. And almost everybody lets you do that. Or you can say, Bob, let's pretend that price wasn't important here for a second. Tell me, what do you like most about your old car? What do you like least? What features are most important on your new car? All you have to do is ask questions. Just say, let's set that aside for a second, and we'll get back to it in a minute. We can't avoid it. First, who's going to be driving the car most of the time, you or your wife, or your son? And get back to asking questions. Do you understand that? I hope you do. That's one of the most important things we've covered. When I wrote my dealer managers class, we talk about the most important selling subjects. And whoever writes the workbook, I guess, gets to pick the most important selling subjects, the things that we need to learn. I picked how to stay off price first, because I don't think you'll ever get around to the basic steps, which I would consider next most important if you're getting this price hum-ho out here. You can't build value if you're talking price. You'll never get into a feature advantage benefit presentation. You probably won't even get to build rapport or investigate if you get bogged down talking about trades, rates, and payments out here. This is the most important subject because it affects everything else you do. And this is one of those things that you need to reread your workbook and practice, drill, and rehearse. Go out in that huddle out there and role play these things. How much is it? $17,300. By the way, who's the lucky one? Who gets the new car, you or somebody else? What are my payments going to run? I don't know. I can't even keep up with the new cars and where they park them, much less what the old ones are worth, and what payments would be. Speaking of payments, that reminds me, were you looking for a 2-door, 4-door station wagon? Practice, drill, and rehearse these so many times that you don't have any problem responding when somebody gives you a price question. The next few pages, 44, 45, 46, are all on price questions. There's scripts in your workbook. I said most of the rest of the workbook is filled with scripts. There's scripts throughout this on how to stay off price, on how to close, how to overcome objections. Turn to page 47 in your workbook. I also said there's another kind of question we need to learn to bypass, and that's that color and equipment question when people first walk on the lot. We had some salespeople that came to the 3-day class. We talk about this stuff. We role play. They went back to the dealership, and dealer trades went down 80% because they learned how to bypass these color and equipment objections. Not only did dealer trades go down 80%, the gross went up. Now, some of you may enjoy doing dealer trades. I can't figure out why. If you enjoy them, if you learn this technique, it's going to screw up your little program there. I always found that dealer trades were a lot of trouble. I got to sell you a car. I got to convince you to give me some money on a car we don't have. Then I got to go find the car. Then I got to send somebody to get it, or I got to go get it. Somewhere in that first 3-step process, most of my customers went down the street and shopped the price and came back and said, Joe, we found the same car down there for less. So I ended up having to negotiate, And then when we got the car in, the darn thing had a ding in the right rear quarter panel. Or something was missing, and it was just problem after problem. I made less money on a dealer trade than I'd have made if I sold something in stock. And then I finally learned to use this technique. The last 352 cars I sold, I didn't dealer trade but one. I did that for a friend. Dealer trading isn't required. All you have to do is learn to sell from stock. But there's one script you got to get rid of. You know, when people walk on the lot and say, I'm looking for a white Explorer, do you guys have one? We have a habit of saying, if we don't have it, no, but I can get you one. No, but I can get you one. Let's take a look at that. When you say, no, but I can get you one, in the first 30 seconds, they walked on the lot, said, do you have a white one? No, but I can get it for you. Didn't you just ask them to make a buying decision? Their response will either be, no, we're not ready, or yes, get me one. Yes, get me one is a buying decision question. Isn't it a little early, 30 seconds into your presentation, to ask somebody to take delivery of a car, to ask if they want to buy this $20,000, $30,000 product? You're going to get a no simply because it's too soon. Not only that, when you say no, but we can get you one, you've taken all the urgency off buying a car today. You've taken all the urgency and all the requirements of maybe picking something from stock because you said you can get me that white one anytime I want it. We create more problems with that script than we ever eliminate with it. There's one difference between bypassing price and bypassing color and equipment. On page 47, there's just one extra question in this script. Between answer and bridge, we need to ask another either-or question. And if you'll learn this script, it's easy, it's scary. I'm looking for a white Explorer. Do you guys have one? Let's assume you don't have one. Gee, Bob, I don't see one out here of silver, blue, and brown. What's your second favorite color? Now, they'll typically respond with, well, silver, but like I said, we wanted a white one. All you got to do is bypass that and bridge. Great, we'll take a look out back. They dropped some cars off yesterday, might be cleaning one up. Speaking of the car, who's the lucky one? Who gets the card, you or somebody else? So answer it, either or, bridge, and then ask a question. I'm looking for an automatic. Do you guys have one? I don't think there's an automatic out here of silver, blue, and brown. What's your favorite color? Well, silver, but like I said, we want an automatic. Great, we'll look out back in a minute. Speaking of the car, who's the lucky one? Who gets the car, you or Betty? Bypass it. It's just a 3 or 4 part technique. Now, if I can stay off white, if I can get rid of white here, and I go all the way through my selling, my presentation, my demonstration, I investigate, I build rapport, I do a nice job of building value, I get to close the sale here. I get to use my assumptive statement. Remember, we got all those check marks. We close the sale on everything except what? Boy, it sure drove nice, didn't it? Yeah, that radio sounds good, doesn't it? Boy, that sunroof's neat, isn't it? I close on everything except the color of the car. I don't talk about the white part. I close on everything else. Sure drove nice, didn't it? Yeah, radio sounds good, doesn't it? Seat sure will be comfortable, won't it? Bob, it sounds to me like we found a perfect car. Do you want to put it in your name or her name? He's either going to say my name, her name, or I want white. It's almost guaranteed. The good news is I've got the value now behind me. I've tried to close the sale. I'm either going to get his name or her name, or they say they want white. Most of the time, if you've done a good job, they'll pick one of these two. Or they'll bring up another objection, but white disappears so quickly you can't believe it. Remember, 86% of the people bought something other than they said they had to have. Let's say that he did say white. And he said, nah, Joe, like I told you, we want a white car. We've always wanted a white one. That doesn't mean I'm done. Before I say, no problem, we'll get you one, let me try to close again. Let me use another close. Bob, is your decision to purchase going to be based on the safety and the economy and the dependability you said was so important, or whether the exterior colors, white or blue? Be amazed what that question will pull out. They say, well, you know, we kind of wanted white, but I guess we could live with blue. Great, come on in, we'll wrap this up. Can I get you a cup of coffee? You want something cold to drink while we take care of the paperwork? Closing is easy as long as you're prepared, but you have to get your minor commitments. You can't skip steps here and then try to get them to take a blue car here. You can't skip steps here and try to get gross here or to get sticker price, no matter what objection you're talking about. You can't skip any steps. Everything in here is pretty easy if you do your job out here the way you're supposed to. And these techniques allow you to go out on the lot and do your job to get them excited about owning it, to build rapport, investigate, cover features, advantages, benefits. And if it gets down to it and he says, nope, got to have white, great, come on inside and we'll wrap this up. For our records, what's the correct spelling of your last name? He said, but you don't have a white one. Nope, but I'll have it here by noon tomorrow, or is tomorrow afternoon going to be better for you to pick it up? So, well, I'll stop by after work. Great. and then you close the sale. You write it up, you got a deal. At least this way, if you had to get the white one, at least you got an order instead of blowing your chances of an order out here. This is another one that you need to go back and read and understand. There are some objection or some scripts there on price and on color and equipment. Page 48. That second step, if you remember, was clarifying the objection. Clarify the objection. We want to make sure we completely understand the objection. It's like example A. They said, I'm not sure this is the right car for us. Let's clarify that. What do they mean when they say I'm not sure this is the right car? When you say you're not sure it's right, are you talking about the color, equipment, or the price? Well, we kind of wanted the SE package too, so now you've found out what isn't quite right. It's kind of nice to know before you start handling the objection. Or example B, I'm not sure this is quite the right car for us. Clarify, just to clear up my mind, when you say you're not sure, am I correct in assuming that if you felt everything was right, you'd take it? Yeah, we probably would. If it's yes, then you say apparently something's not right. Do you mind if I ask what it is? Then you'll find the objection. If they say no, we probably wouldn't. Well, you must have a reason for saying that. Do you mind if I ask what it is? So when we clarify, if there's this other objection there, we kind of like to know it. But you always want to clarify. And like that other objection, the lady said, I want to go get my friend. We want to clarify that. Or when they say it's too much money, when you say it's too much money, what does that mean? Are you talking about price or payments? Well, the payment's pretty high, so it sounds like you want to make sure you keep everything within your budget, am I right? Oh, yeah. Yeah, if it'd stay in our budget, I'd take it. We need to clarify. If we don't clarify, it's going to be hard to rephrase. Page 49, rephrasing objections. Remember before I said we were talking about those 7 objections, and you could take almost all of those and turn them into 3, maybe 4 objections? By rephrasing the objection, what you do is change the objection. Like a guy says it's too much money. Let's change that. Sounds to me like you're on a budget. Well, yeah, I am. So if we could fit it in your budget, would you take it? Yes. Now, how differently would you handle budget than it's too much money, which is easier to work with? Obviously, budget. 3 down here, in number 1 under 3, it says 1, 2, 3 down here. It says if you'll practice and practice this one, you'll be able to take almost any objection and turn it into one of these 3 easy-to-close objections. Sounds to me like you want to make sure it fits your budget or that you can afford it. Almost any price objection. Well, that's a lot of money. Sounds like you just want to make sure you can afford it, am I right? Oh, well, yeah, Joe. But you know, it's a lot. It's kind of a strain on our budget. Assuming we could fit it in your budget, would there be any reason we couldn't send you home in it? Oh, no, if it fit our budget, we'd take it. Number 2 there, it sounds to me like you want to make sure you're getting a good deal. Now, I use this one, you know, when people say they're going to shop, well, Joe, I like your car, but I'm going to shop, see what I can do down the street. Bob, you shopping for different cars, or you're going to shop for price? No, I'm going to shop the price and see if I can get a better deal. Sounds to me like you're looking for a good deal, am I right? Oh, yeah, sure you are. And now I clarify what a good deal is. Bob, isn't a good deal a car you like at a price you can afford from people and a place that'll take care of you after the sale as well? And they generally respond, well, yeah, all that's important. I just don't want to pay too much. Well, let's see if we can take that down another notch. Bob, when you say you don't want to pay too much, are you saying you'd cut our throat to save $10? Now, regardless of what you'd like to say, in real life, nobody says, yes, I'd cut your throat to save $10 if I've done my job on the lot. Now, if I haven't, yeah, I could agree they would. When I say, are you saying you cut our throat to save $10? He said, nah, I wouldn't cut your throat to save $10. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the customer just agree to pay me more than he'll pay down the street? And now the only question is how much more? We got that by rephrasing the objection, by changing the objection. Number 3 down here, change it to you're making a good decision. Somebody says, I want to check with my friend. I want to check with my neighbor. I want to check with my accountant. Why is that? Well, I'm just not that comfortable buying cars. Sounds to me like you want to make sure you're making a good decision. Am I right? Well, yeah. Now, if I can convince them it's a good decision, they won't need to go check with their neighbor, their friend, or their mechanic. How do I do that? An evidence manual would be kind of handy. Letters from happy customers would be kind of handy. A letter from another customer who says, I've never owned one of your products before. I bought one of these, best car I ever owned. Tie that in with an article from Car and Driver, Road and Track, Motor Trend. Say, Betty, here's a letter from a lady just like yourself. Wasn't sure about a product, got it. Here's what she said. Not only that, here's an article from Car and Driver, says it's the best small car on the market. That's how you prove it. That's how you eliminate them having to go down the street. You got to quit popping up when they say, well, I need to check with my wife. Well, let's go get her. Don't do that yet. Clarify, isolate, rephrase, and take it step by step. Page 50, isolate. Isolate the objection. What are the key words to isolate? Talked about it before. Other than. No matter what the objection is. I like the car, but I wanted blue. So what should we say? You're right. So Bob, other than blue, is there anything else holding you back? I like the car, but I wanted a sunroof. So other than the car not having a sunroof, is there anything else holding you back? I like the car, but it's a lot of money. So other than the money, is there anything else holding you back? Let's say they throw in a second objection. I like the car, but I wanted blue. So Bob, other than blue, is there anything else holding you back? Well, we kind of wanted the SE package too. Let's clarify that. Bob, is having the SE package something on your priority list, or is that just kind of on your wish list? Well, I guess we don't really have to have it. So again, other than the color then, is there any other reason we couldn't send you home in it now? If he brings up another objection, well, it's kind of expensive. When you say it's kind of expensive, you're talking about price or payments? Yeah, payments. So it sounds like you want to fit it in your budget, am I right? Yeah. So if we could fit this silver car in your budget, would there be any other reason we couldn't send you home in it now? No, I guess if you could fit it in my budget, I'd take it. And we clip it down and clip it down and take it down and take it down until we get to an objection that we can work with. But before we try to overcome an objection, we always isolate it. Never want to try to close on it until you've isolated it. If you don't isolate it, remember that example we were talking about, everything's going smooth. Bobby brought up his objection. He says, well, I don't know if I like those Goodyear Eagle GTs. Most of us go straight to the objection. No problem, we can change the tires. Didn't isolate it. You want to isolate it. Bobby says, I don't know if I like those Goodyear Eagle GTs. Well, Bobby, I understand. Now remember, this is an objection out of nowhere. You want to go very slowly with this one. So Bobby, I understand. But you do like the rest of the car, don't you? Yeah. And you liked the color, didn't you? Yeah. And that radio sounded good, didn't it? Yeah. Bobby, let me ask you a question. Other than this having those Goodyear Eagle GTs on it, would there be anything else holding you back from getting it? Now, if you've gone slower and you want to go still slower than I did, but he probably is now in a position to say, nah, Joe, I just don't like them. Then you handle the objection because you've gotten an agreement that there are no other objections. If you don't get that agreement, he's going to give you another one and another one and another one, and you're going to get so many you can't handle it. And he's going to leave half mad. He wishes he'd have bought the car. You wished he'd have bought the car, and both of you lose. And the really bad news is he goes down the street and buys the car from one of your competitors, the one who didn't give a good presentation, didn't do a nice job presenting and demonstrating, didn't investigate, didn't build rapport, care less about Bobby and his car. So it's a shame to go to all that work and miss a sale because we don't follow the steps. The last method we talked about is closing on the objection. Now again, the workbook is filled. The next few pages are on closing on specific objections, those objections we talked about. I want to stress, though, that when we talk about closing on an objection, or we talk about closing sales, the yes questions, the either-or questions, the involvement questions, the sharp angle questions, and the assumptive questions, statements, and closes. Bypassing objections, clarifying objections, rephrasing, isolating, and closing on objections. All of those are going to come into play now. In fact, at the bottom of page 51, and let's go through this script slowly. Let's look at what we've learned and see how that these methods start to apply. Right underneath that little box there, it says customer. I'm just not sure if this is the right car for us. First of all, we need to clarify it. So when you say you're not sure, am I correct in assuming if you felt everything was right, you'd take it? And the customer said, well, yeah, probably we would. So if it's yes, apparently something's not right. Do you mind if I ask what it is? Well, the customer, we like the car, but you guys want a lot of money for it. Got another objection. So let's rephrase that objection. That's a tough one. If I understand what you're saying, you'd like to have it as long as you can fit it in your budget, am I right? Well, yeah, who wouldn't? So isolate it. So Bob, other than fitting this in your budget, keeping your payments in line, is there anything else keeping you from getting it now? Second objection, we kind of wanted the SE. Clarify that. Is having the SE important or just on your wish list? Well, it'd be nice, but I guess we can do without it. It's time to isolate again. Bob, having that SE would make your payments even higher. So other than the payments, is there anything else holding you back? No, that's about it. Close. Come on in, we'll start the paperwork. Going to register this in your name or Betty's. Put it in both names. And they bring up a price objection, but what would payments run? Bypass it. Bob, it always depends on payments, and we'll get back to that in a minute. Can I get you guys a cup of coffee? You want something cold to drink while we wrap this up? Or for our records, what's the correct spelling of your last name? It's clarify, rephrase, isolate. Second objection, clarify, isolate, close, and bypass, and close again. You'll use these methods again and again in a closing script from start to finish. There isn't one quick little close. You go along and everything's hunky-dory and you get off a demonstration drive and you say, well, what do you think? Secret close. There isn't one. It's a combination of everything that we've talked about. You have to get the minor commitments throughout your presentation to get those little closes. When you get down to the closing question, you're going to use an assumptive statement and either or question. When you get an objection, you're going to need to bypass it if it's the wrong objection. You need to clarify it so you understand it. You're going to need to rephrase it to break it down. You're going to isolate it so that you can close on it. Closing and objections. 5 techniques on closing, 5 techniques on objections. Your homework revolves around the 5 techniques on closing and the 5 techniques on objections. Do your homework and everything that we talk about. The other closing techniques, we're going to cover 10 ways to close a sale on the lot. We'll give you the 10 best closes. And I think there's only one of them that's got if I could, would you, even in it, sort of. We'll talk about some ways to handle the objections that you get out on the lot. We'll talk about, after you get that final commitment, we'll talk about that transition into inside and show you how to get even more commitments as you close the sale. Selling's going to be easier, it's going to be tough, and it's going to be based on what you know. So go practice, drill, and rehearse, and I'll see you on the next set.
This concludes this segment of your training program. As Joe says, the key to your success in learning to close more sales and hold gross is to practice, drill, and rehearse the techniques he's giving you in this training series. And don't forget, be sure to complete the homework assignment for this tape before you go on to the next tape. Good luck on the quiz, too, and we'll see you in the next tape. Of the Joe Verde training program, How to Close More Sales.